Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. My name is Katherine McGinn. I'm the director of the Fulbright Commission in Hungary. I will be your host today.
Good morning, everyone. Boy, I see a lot of young faces in the audience. That's terrific.
We have witnesses to speak to you about the good and bad old times that shaped current Hungary 30 or 40 years ago.
Was the year, as Ambassador Cornstein mentioned, where the barriers in Europe came down.
To understand the future of Hungary, it's good to go back to the turning point, but also a little bit to history.
My parents came from the United States in 1990, and there wasn't really a lot of news or information about what was going on in Central and Eastern Europe. And they remember saying that was the first picture that they took sending home was a picture in front of the butcher shops, telling their parents and telling everybody that there was food and there was honestly a vibrant community in Budapest in Hungary, just because it was an example of how little people knew about the Eastern Bloc.
I took the political yearbook of Hungary and I checked what happened in '89, and I just read it, and it was a time machine, you know.
I do remember sitting next to my mom on the couch and watching the fall of the Berlin Wall, but I had no idea what that meant because I was 5. If I lived in Hungary at that time, I can only imagine how unhappy I would have been as a child if my parents couldn't afford the food that they needed or couldn't buy me toys, or it was an incredibly difficult time for most people.
Due to my background in international security, I was thinking to bring you a few thoughts and comments about specifically the security domain and kind of looking into the future and explaining what path was open for Hungary with the tearing down of the Iron Curtain.
My mom left Hungary in 1987, 2 years before the wall came down, and she moved to Germany, and she talked a lot about kind of how she left the country. I think she did not believe that the wall would ever come down. It was very much a shock to her. And she had married my father, and then a couple months later the wall came down, which was again a huge surprise to her.
When we are talking about music and rebellion, I must add that, of course, we were not rebels in the strict sense of the word, in the political sense of the word. Why? Because it was impossible to be a political rebel, especially in the early 1980s.
Self-censorship, I also believe, has a positive effect in a sense that it makes people express themselves in a more sophisticated way than they perhaps would out of protest.
I was quite small, but still I remember that sometimes we went to these larger protests during the change with our parents, and I also have quite strong memories of the first election.
Here is my basic rule. Seeing is not believing. Nothing or very little that I saw as a Fulbrighter in Hungary in the 1980s.
I also learned during my 7 years in New York City, a little bit I learned about how to live under stress. I'm planning to share some of these tactics with you today.
I don't think the history books capture the average people's perception of the event. It used to be a sudden and violent change, but I talked with my grandparents about it and my parents as well, and they said that it was barely noticeable.
Számomra ez akármennyire nevetségesen hangzik ez, hogy az egyik első gyerekkori emlékem az, hogy a családdal a Dallast nézzük. Ez az amerikai popkultúra, ez a mi családunkban, meg az egész utcánkban, ez annyira erősen jelent meg, hogy egyszerűen ennek a hatása azonnal beszippantott, és beszippant a mai napig.
I think Budapest is a really interesting almost exception to the rule of post-Soviet states. It's such an international city.
I decided to give you a grassroots explanation, a recollection of the process that led to the day commonly known as Pan-European Picnic.
I haven't studied a lot of Eastern European history, so that's been something really interesting for me to do since I've arrived in Budapest. But yeah, it's been really interesting to kind of especially with the lectures we've had recently, to kind of navigate the history of Budapest, both pre-1989 and post-1989.
I will speak about Hungarian films, and I'm afraid that Hungarian films of the 80s are not known for us.
For me, the sentimental part of the session is where Hungary really tried to compensate for its communication through fighting for freedom in music. And the interesting part is the intercultural relation between US and America in terms of how the American music played an arts and film effect on Hungary, and how Hungary is successful in communicating through arts and music through that past.
And what is more, of the students, the next generation, our future.